Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Omar Eats. In today's episode, we're going to be making baba ghanouj, which is an appetizer from the Middle East, particularly in the Levantine area, which is Syria, Lebanon, that entire region. Baba ghanouj is a staple of the Levantine cuisine and Middle Eastern cuisine in general. Now, baba ghanouj is not a dish that I particularly have eaten all my life. I only really started eating baba ghanouj around a few years ago when my mother made it for me one night, and it was absolutely amazing. Ever since then, I've been trying to make it myself. Sometimes have been better than other times, but nonetheless, I have the recipe down, and now it's time for me to share the recipe with all of you, and we can make baba ghanouj together. I hope you enjoy the video. Stay tuned. So the very first ingredient, and by far the most important and essential ingredient of baba ghanouj, is eggplants. Now, you can use one large eggplant for yourself if you're only cooking for one, but I'm cooking for myself and someone else, so I'm going to use 3 pretty small or medium-sized eggplants for this dish. We're going to be putting it in the oven, letting it roast and bake thoroughly. So make sure you have eggplants, like I said, one large one or a few small ones like I'm using here today. The next essential ingredient is tahini sauce. This sauce will be put in and mixed in with the inside of the eggplants that we're using. It is 1,000,000% essential that you have tahini sauce. You can find it at Middle Eastern markets or even virtually any grocery store that you look for. Make sure you have tahini sauce on hand. The next essential ingredient for the baba ghanouj is garlic. Make sure that you have some fresh garlic ready to be used. We're going to be using about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. So garlic is very essential. Make sure you have some on hand. The very next ingredient that is also essential for the baba ghanouj is yogurt. Now, my mother has made her own homemade yogurt. Not everyone has homemade yogurt, and that's fine, but you can go to any store, any market, and pick up some Greek yogurt of any kind and use it for the baba ghanouj. So I'm going to be using my mother's homemade yogurt today for the dish. The next ingredient that we're going to be using is parsley. It is not an ultra essential part of the dish. This will be used kind of as a garnish at the very end of the dish. So make sure you have some parsley. We're going to be chopping just a little bit. It's going to look very good on the baba ghanouj when it's finished. The next item that we're going to be using is pine nuts. Now, actually, we're going to be roasting the pine nuts on the stovetop. It's going to give the baba ghanouj some extra texture and a little bit of flavor in as well. It is not essential. It is not 100% needed in baba ghanouj, but it is a nice little thing that you can add to make this to make the dish a little bit more artsy and also taste good. The next ingredient that we're going to be using is salt, but not necessarily for the dish. This will be used for the garlic. When we start mincing the garlic later on, it makes the garlic a lot easier to be minced. So make sure you have some salt as well. The next item that we're going to need is olive oil. Olive oil will also be kind of considered a garnish at the end, giving the baba ghanouj a little bit more juice to it. We're not going to be using a lot of it because we don't want the dish to be flooded with olive oil, but make sure you have some olive oil on hand. The next ingredient that we're going to need is also very essential, and that is pita bread. You can find this at really any grocery store that you go to. I have some fresh, good Greek pita bread. I'm going to roast it in the oven or try to get it a little bit hot so it's nice and hot for the baba ghanouj for about like 1.5 minutes. But make sure you have some pita bread on hand as well. And the final set of ingredients that we're going to be using are 2 different spices, cumin and paprika, or paprika, however you want to pronounce it. These are not 100% essential to baba ghanouj, but in essence they kind of are, just because they give the dish color and a rich taste as well. So make sure you have some cumin and paprika on hand as well. They'll complement the baba ghanouj very well, and that is the ingredients that we need to use today. So the very first step that we're going to do to start cooking the baba ghanouj is to take the eggplants that we have. You want to take a fork, and what we're going to begin doing is actually poking holes inside of the eggplant. You don't want to go too deep, and the reason why we're doing this is to release the pressure from inside of the eggplant so that it doesn't burst while we are broiling it in the oven. And you want to do it kind of throughout the entire eggplant. Don't go too deep, as I said, just enough holes. That should be enough. One more here. That's done. Repeat the same process for all of the eggplants if you're using multiple eggplants, of course. It is essential that you do this. This will make sure that the eggplant is cooked more thoroughly. And of course, as I said, make sure that the pressure is released and therefore there won't be any explosion happening in your oven, which obviously we don't want. So make sure you finish that off. After that, we'll go to the oven and turn it on. As you want to see, going right through, and the holes are very much intact here, and those look ready to be roasted. So we're here at the oven and we're going to broil on high. So I click broil on high and wait a few minutes so that the oven can warm up. Once that begins, we can start roasting the eggplants and get going with the rest of the dish. So the next thing to do is to put the eggplants in, and we leave them there for around 40 minutes while they roast and cook thoroughly. We're going to be checking in on the eggplants a few times just to make sure that everything's going well, but 40 minutes should be about enough for the eggplants to thoroughly cook. Now that we have that done, time to work on everything else. So the next step that we're going to do is begin mincing the garlic. As you see, I have 4 cloves here, and I have a little bit of a mound of salt that I'm going to use here. Now, if you have a mortar at home, you can go ahead and use a mortar if you know how to do that. But if you don't, and I, believe it or not, don't, I'm going to be using this technique that my mother actually taught me. We're simply going to dab a little bit of salt on the knife that we have here, and we just begin scraping away slowly, trying to get a little bit of the pieces out, as you see here. Just keep scraping, and it'll become mushy, and you'll have your little garlic pieces as you see there. Put some more salt on it. The salt helps cut it open and makes it softer and more able to begin the mushing process, because garlic is very naturally hard as it is. And you just keep doing that for all the cloves of garlic till you have small pieces. Be careful for your fingers, of course. Use a butter knife because these are softer and safer. And you're just going to keep doing that for every garlic that you have until you get those types of pieces here, and that'll eventually be mixed into the baba ganoush later on. As you see here, we have the garlic mushed up pretty well. It is very soft, and of course we've minced it thoroughly. The next step is to put it into a small little bowl that we're going to be using later on. And now that we have that done, we can get ahead and start chopping the parsley a little bit. So we have some leaves of parsley here that we're going to take with a knife here, of course, and careful for your fingers. We're just going to cut very small, soft little cuts. We're not going to chop this heavily at all. We just wanted to get it to smaller pieces that we can use as garnish for the baba ganoush. When we are all finished, this will be the very final thing that we put on there. This should be just enough parsley to use, and we want to mince it until it's pretty small, and you can see that the pieces are becoming small here. We're going to try to get them a little bit smaller. Be careful to not press too hard and let the flavor get onto the cutting board itself here, and just keep doing that until you get them into small pieces. The eggplants are roasting pretty well, so I'm going to give it around 5 more minutes on this side, and then what we're going to do is actually flip them over so the other side can get some of the charbroil going on as well, and we'll give that another 20 minutes or so. And I wish you can smell what I'm smelling right now because it's absolutely fragrant. So if you're smelling the eggplant and it has a very fragrant part to it, then you know everything is cooking well. So we'll give this around another 5 minutes and then we'll flip it over. So as you see here, the eggplants are pretty much roasted pretty well. It has a very smoky fragrance to it. So we are done with the eggplants, so we're going to take them out of the oven And now it's time to remove the insides so we can put it into the baba ganoush as well. So now that the eggplants have cooled off a little bit after 5 to 10 minutes outside of the oven, it's time to actually open up the eggplants. So what we're going to do is take a knife here. You're going to go to the very end and you're going to begin cutting slowly, making a slit right down the middle so the eggplant can open up. As you see the insides here, we need these insides. We don't need the outer shell. So you're going to want to do that to all of the different eggplants you have here. They're going to open up very easily because it's already been cooked. And as you can see, the eggplant continues to open up. The next step will be to take a spoon and actually scoop up all of these on the inside and put them in a separate mixing bowl. And of course, remember, careful because it still is going to be hot, but that's what we're going to do. Just take it out, and you're going to repeat that process for every single eggplant that we have until they are fully depleted away from everything inside. So we've removed the insides from the eggplants, so we have them in here, and the next step to do is to just kind of go like that, little slits with the knife, so that we can get the pieces as small as we can get them, so that they're easier to mix later down when we are putting the baba ganoush together. And you just want to go horizontal like that and get them into smaller pieces so we'll be ready for the baba ganoush. So now that we've pretty much cut up the eggplants very well, it's time to mix in the tahini and the yogurt. So we're going to take a big spoon like we have here, and we have the tahini here. Before we just pour in the tahini here, we need to mix this around because oil, of course, can get pretty formed the texture, and we want it to be smooth and easy. And this is sesame oil, of course, in the tahini here. Should be enough. You're just gonna rinse it around a little bit more like that. And we're going to take 2 spoons of the tahini. Let that all around in there. We don't want to use too much because tahini can be very bitter, and we don't want the baba ganoush to be bitter. So 2 spoons should be enough of it. We're going to move on here to the yogurt that we have, and we're going to do it in batches. This is about 1.5 cups of the yogurt. So here's 1 batch of it. We're going to take some garlic in as well, the garlic that we've put down. Let that garlic sit in there, and we begin mixing. We want it to be smooth and easy. We will adjust later down the line to see how well it's being mixed. So it might need some more yogurt. As you can see, the yogurt's pretty white. We want it to be blended into one singular type of color and texture here, making sure that it's consistent. It can have a little bit of form to it, that's completely fine. You just don't want it to be too mushy or too solid either. You want it to be the right consistency. So I'm going to add a little bit more yogurt. I did take a taste of the baba ganoush, and I thought that it was a little bit too bitter. The yogurt will kind of sweeten it out a little bit. And again, we just mix around so it all becomes a solid singular color. It's okay to take a taste test to make sure that it's to your liking. If it's too bitter, put in more yogurt. If it's too sweet, a little bit more tahini. Balance it out. So the baba ganoush has been mixed pretty well. It's not smooth or rough, it's just the right consistency. I did not use the full 1.5 cups of yogurt. I only used a little bit, and it's all really to your taste liking. That's a personal choice that you can make, so no pressure to feel on any end. But now that this is done, time to transfer it to the plate here. And then we're going to begin roasting the pine nuts and putting on the finishing touches of the baba ganoush. So we have the pine nuts roasting here. It's on a very small fire, and it's only going to take around 1.5 minutes to really get them a little bit roasted. Once they become a little bit browned, they'll be ready to go. And by the way, there is no measurement. It's just how many pine nuts you would like in there. I put about a handful and a little bit more. That should be around a minute maybe, and we'll be done and ready to put it into the baba ganoush. So as you can see here, they are browning pretty well. About 30 more seconds and that'll be done and ready to be transferred over to the plate. So now we're just putting the pita bread inside of the oven, letting it warm up a little bit. Make sure you don't leave them in too long so they don't get burned, but that should take around 1.5 minutes, and that'll be ready to eat. So here we have the very final finished product, the baba ganoush. We have the cumin there, we have the pine nuts roasted, the baba ganoush itself, olive oil, the chopped parsley, paprika. You just want to spread it all around, and right there is the baba ganoush ready to be eaten. It's a very simple, easy process. Can just only be time consuming when you're waiting for the eggplant to roast in the oven. But other than that, we are done and we are ready to eat and see how it is. So there you have it. We have ourselves a baba ganoush ready to be eaten. It was very fun to make this dish, but now it's time to actually try it and see how it is. That came out great, actually. It's not overbearing from the tahini or anything like that. It's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe would put a little bit more garlic just because I love garlic personally, but it tastes pretty good. I have to give it 2 thumbs up as usual because it's just pretty good. Anyway, if you liked the video, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share the video if you haven't already. And I hope to see you next time on Omar Eats. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much, and enjoy everything else to come.